Hi, welcome to episode 460 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea where I sell my handspun yarns and knitting patterns. If you're looking for this episode show notes or any episode show notes, you can find that over at thecornerofknitandtea.com. So hi, how are you? It is Monday, February 5th, and I admit that I messed up my own intro because I was starting to think about the patterns that I'm going to discuss and do I have all of the specifics on who designed them. So my brain was just like trying to think through things and speak and yeah. So how are you? We are enjoying some lovely spring weather and I have picked my tea selection to go along with that for today. It was 63 on Friday and I put on a t-shirt and went outside and walked in the sunshine and it was glorious. It got a little cooler yesterday. It was rainy and 40 degrees, but it's still not bad considering where we were at the beginning of the year. And I know that spring is not here yet, even though our groundhog didn't see his shadow, so they're saying early spring. I'm sure that we will have more winter weather to come, but I am enjoying a little taste of spring and some sunshine. So I hope that you're doing well. I got into some crafting mischief this week, some things that I didn't expect I would get into. So I guess let's just jump in. So like I said, I picked cherry blossom tea today for a little spring. This is from David's Teas and it's white tea, green tea. It's got cherries, coconut, rosebuds, and other flavors. So that is what I am drinking today, and I'm drinking it in my roastery mug, which technically is a Kansas City coffee house, but I don't think it matters. It's a lovely enamel mug and it keeps everything nice and warm, and just a little sweetness from cherry blossom and thinking about springy thoughts. So I have nothing finished this week, but I have progress on things and it's new things. So we'll discuss. So the first two little things that I will show you are not new. They are chicken feathers. I did 2 more sets of chicken feathers this week. I believe this brings my total, I double checked, I believe this brings my total to 15 this week. So I am maybe halfway to my goal. I don't know exactly how many I'm going to need. I am just going to keep knitting until I have about 30 of them, and then I'm going to take them in and we're going to pin them up and see how they cover the chicken, and then I will decide what else I need to make to finish it off. So I just keep pulling, moving forward on my pieces, and these are very pink and purple and some browns and a little bit of even green in there. So I'm having some fun with these. So that's another 2 to add to the collection. The rest of the stuff is 2 projects are new and 1 is an ongoing. So I did talk to you last week about my Fix It, Finish It, Frog It February and how I had frogged a sweater and was starting a new sweater. And I've made some progress. I haven't made a ton of progress, but I've made some. And that is I had knit a sweater out of this Juniper Moon Bud, which is a kind of a boucle-ish yarn. So it's a thicker yarn applied with a thread, and it is in the Primrose colorway. And I had bought a bunch of this bulky weight cotton to knit a sweater, and I knit it, and I was never 100% on the fit, and it just sat on top of my dresser for a couple of years. And so what I did was I pulled it out and saved the yarn to reuse, and I'm working on a new cardigan. So the cardigan that I'm knitting is called Ramona. It is by Elizabeth Smith Knits, or Elizabeth Smith, and it is just a really simple cardigan. It's got a cute detail kind of around the sleeve, around the raglan shaping at the sleeve, and then it's got some thick button bands and ribbing around the neck and around the bottom. And so this is a top-down raglan sweater. It's pretty easy. I haven't gotten too far into it, but I am about halfway done with my raglan increases. So, whoops, I'm about to throw stitches off the needle, but I am working on this one. So you can see the yarn works up. It's kind of nubbly and textured, and so I didn't really want a lot of a pattern. So this is really a pretty simple pattern, and the only thing that I really like, one of the little details is just that there's kind of this garter stitch note at the raglan, and it's really, it's a little bit hard to, hang on, let me just mute that tab Sorry, I didn't mean for my notifications to keep coming up. It's got a little bit of a garter stitch detail in the raglan shaping, so it's just got one stitch there that shows that little detail. It's a little hard to tell. It would be a more interesting detail if I weren't working with kind of this boucle nubbly yarn, but it's a little bit of a detail. So I'm about halfway through the raglan shaping, and then I can pull off for the sleeves. Bulky weight does work up pretty fast. I just haven't been able to spend a ton of time on this week, and so that is kind of where I'm at with that, but I plan to continue, and it feels really good. It's nice and soft and cottony, and I'm hoping it's going to be a lovely spring cardigan. Actually, it would be perfect for a day like today over a t-shirt. So I'm just going to keep working on that. I have that in my yarn crawl bag from Kansas City in 2021. So that's just kind of a fun bag, and it's holding all of that in there. And I did go ahead and order an extra skein or two just in case I run out. I haven't even color matched them yet. I will alternate if I need to, but that is how that's moving along. So I need to do more of that, but that is how that project is working along. So I often say that when I have like projects set out and I'm kind of busy and I have things that I need or want to do, that is when I pick up a bunch of other projects. And that's kind of how that started this week. So the first thing was that, let me think about this. On Friday, my brain woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning, and normally I can sleep no problem, but my brain woke up and was like, no, you can't go back to sleep. You have to think about all the things you have to do and all the things you have to make and all the things. And one of the things that came to mind is that my mom's birthday is at the beginning of March, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to get for her or make for her. And because I already had my February projects planned out, of course I decided I was going to make her something, because why wouldn't I? So I thought about what I might want to make her, and I decided I was going to make her kind of a top-down tee. And I decided that maybe I would make her one like I made for myself, that was called the Maven Tee, and I can't remember the designer's name, but she also goes by Maven Crafted, and that is her website, and I will put links to the pattern in the show notes, which is over at the corner of neatandtea.com. And it is a top-down tee, and it has some yoke shaping. It just has a series of increases in the yoke, and it's basically a stockinette tee with some ribbed edging and then some pearl ridges throughout every few rows. So it's, or every few rounds. It's a really easy tee. I took it with me when I went to Norway, which was October of 2022. And the reason that I took it then was because I used one big gradient cake to knit it. And so I took one skein of yarn and one set of needles. And so I really kind of wanted to knit it for her in a gradient cake, but I couldn't find any that were in stock anywhere. So I actually perused my stash, and I found something really lovely in my stash. So as I was thinking about things, I realized that I had bought some gradients a while ago, and I had kind of bought them thinking I would make a topper tee for myself, or that I would make some kind of big wrap. And so I just decided to go ahead and take that and repurpose it for this. So the gradient itself is from Marinated Yarns, or I should say Marinated Yarns, and this is the card that came with it. So it is her Princess Quail, and it's pinks. It goes from kind of a baby pink into a magenta, and it's her 6-pack Perfection gradient set, 800 yards. It's 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, and it's just really, really luscious yarn. And so the yarn that I'm using is a pink gradient. You can kind of see here what is left. And I have the first two colors in the set already in the sweater. So this is the gradient. And I had to decide whether to start with the light pink at the top or start with the dark pink at the top. And I ultimately decided to start with the light at the top. I actually think the dark would be slightly more flattering around the face, but I decided to just do it. And as I said, this is kind of a, it's kind of scrunched up on the needles now because that's what these things look like. But it is a knit in the round. You've got some ribbing up top, and then it is basically a stockinette with some shaping. You can see my shaping there, and then you can also see the pearl ridges. And I have just started to go into the second color in the gradient, and I'm just kind of alternating rows. I kind of had to eyeball where I was was in this color and how much I would have left, and I think I've done it correctly. I think I will have the perfect amount to do kind of a quick fade into it. Of course, the fade doesn't work quite as well on stockinette as it would in reverse stockinette, because of course the pearl bumps kind of meld the colors together, but I think it's going to be fine, because even though you can kind of see it here and it looks a little bit stripy, the colors really are fairly close together, so I don't think it's going to be any I don't think it's going to be super noticeable. I think it's just going to be a nice gradient, but I'm kind of just alternating a little bit through my next few rounds and continuing on knitting down. So my goal is to finish this by the end of the month. My mom's birthday is early in March, and I would like to get it out to her as soon as possible. I think that will be fine. Okay, so I should mention, I'm knitting the size extra small because my mom is tiny, tiny, tiny. I knit the medium for myself when I did it, and the medium called for about 800 yards, and I think I used about 750. I have 800 here, and I believe the size that I'm knitting calls for between 650 and 7. And so I will work as long as I want to. The only thing that I will change about this is it is kind of a cropped top, and I don't think my mom will wear anything that's super cropped, so I'll probably make it a little bit longer. But of course, since her size calls for 650 yards or so, and I have 800, I'll have plenty to make it the way I want it. So that is kind of what I'm working on now, and this is what I primarily spent my time on Friday, Saturday, Sunday this weekend. And I'm gonna try and finish this first before I really dig into my sweater. The other thing that I'm actually really enjoying is I have had some hand pain of late. And I hadn't really thought about it, but in past years, I have had multiple projects going at one time, and often I'll have like a couple fingering weight projects and a something in a little bit heavier weight. And lately, everything that I have been knitting has been worsted and above, and I think that's kind of triggering a little bit of my hand pain working in the larger size yarns on larger needles, because I sat down and worked on this in maybe 2 sessions, and it was lovely, and I had no hand pain. I just knit. So I think the deal is that in the past I have varied the different projects that I'm working on by weight, and I've been working on heavier weight projects lately. So I'm glad to have a fingering weight project back in the mix. So yeah, so that's the Maven pattern. I am knitting it on slightly smaller needles than called for. That is just because of my differences in gauge. Otherwise, I'm knitting it per pattern. I might make it a little bit longer, but basically it tells you roughly how long to make it. But you can just keep going in pattern because it's a fairly simple tee. There's not a ton of shaping. After you finish the yoke shaping, you can basically knit it straight. You don't have to add body shaping if you don't want to. And so I will probably just keep doing that until it reaches a length that I'm happy with. So again, that's Marionated Yarns. I'm using one of her gradients. Yay for moving things out of stash, because my my resolve this year is to do better about knitting from stash and not buying a ton of yarns. So far I'm failing that miserably, but I did pick a project out of my stash. The failing miserably and also a little bit of explanation. So I don't know how many of you saw the notice. If you are a fan of Zen Yarn Garden, you know that I have been knitting samples from them for a while now, the last 3 or 4 years, and they announced last week that they are retiring and that they are closing the business. And so that's sort of the secret as to why I'm doing less sample knitting this year. There was no falling out. We love each other, but they notified me that they have decided that they're going to retire, and so the business is in closeout right now. Everything on the site is 50% off. They are winding down. They will probably continue to operate for the next several months, because she said they still have base yarn in stock, and they're going to dye it and pretty much sell until everything's gone. But there will not be new samples, which is part of why I don't have a lot of sample knits that I'm working on right now. And then that also is what I failed miserably at, because as soon as they really announced they were closing and put everything on 50% off, I went and bought a couple sweater quantities. So I have sweaters that I'm going to knit this year with Zen Yarn Garden for my own enjoyment. There are a few samples that actually I hope to recreate. So you will see those over the coming months. But my resolve this year is generally to knit from stash and only to buy to supplement. For instance, like I'm turning this pink yarn that I sort of reclaimed into a sweater, and if I need an extra skein or two to finish that off, I'm willing to buy that. But for the most part, I would really, really, really like to knit from stash this year. So I'm hoping that's going to work out. So the second thing that I cast on that I had no intention of casting on was yesterday I met up for coffee with a friend. And I'm working on that bulky weight sweater that is in that big bag. And I'm working on that sweater for my mom. And I was right kind of at the end of one color and where I needed to start to build in the second color in the gradient. And I'm also still in the section where there are all these increases. And I decided neither of those were appropriate knitting to take with me. And the mittens that I'm working on for myself, I did start the cuff for the second mitten, but that is 100% charted and I have to do all those bobbles. And so I had all these projects in process that I wanted to work on and nothing that was appropriate to take to have coffee with a friend and face other distractions. And so I decided that I would cast on one of the projects that has sort of been waiting in the wings for me to cast on. I knew the pattern, I had the yarn in stash, I was ready to go, other than the fact that I wasn't going to let myself cast it on right away. So I cast on a pair of socks. So I bought, before I left Stitchcraft Marketing, so in over a year ago now, I bought some yarn from a client of mine, and the client was Freya, and I bought these, and I bought these at 100%. I don't know why I bought them right before I left her, but I bought them, and I didn't get any discount, and I don't get any kickback. This is totally my review. She had come up, she sourced a new yarn. It is absolutely amazing, and it is a superwash merino. It's Shanico Merino, or Shanico Merino, and it is absolutely the softest, most amazing feeling yarn that you can ever touch. And she's got it in a variety of weights, but she sourced a superwash fingering so that she could make sock yarn in her signature gradients. And it's a little hard to tell because like the greenest, well, okay, I'll just flip it over that way. That's really the gradient. And this is the, does it have the name on it of that? This is the chameleon gradient. And the skeins are basically dyed in her patented method so that they are identical and they will create two identical socks. And I had bought these a while ago and had waffled on what pattern I wanted to use and what I wanted to do. And if you remember last year for Zen Yarn Garden, I used a pattern from Knit Picks that was called 2 at a Time Toe Up Socks, and it had this real interesting heel where the kind of heel flap textured section of the heel went under the heel and then up around the back of the heel. And I knit 2 pairs for Zen Yarn Garden, and I decided I really, really, really wanted to knit a pair for myself and see what that heel felt like and how it wore. So yesterday I cast on, I'm doing 2 at a time, which is actually not my preferred method. I actually prefer to use DPNs, but this one is 2 at a time, and I have 2 gradient cakes, so why not do 2 at a time? And so I have toes. This was as far as I got in our hour-and-a-half meeting, but I have 2 toes, and I am now ready to work upwards. So, and it is 2 as opposed to 1. So the thing that I find about 2 at a time socks, what I love about them is that when you're done, you're done. Like everything you do it twice. And then when you get to the top and you bind off, you are done. You have a pair of socks. You have no second sock syndrome. But what I don't like is that it takes twice as long. And I feel like in Magic Loop, I spend a lot of time moving the needles around and moving the yarn around so it doesn't get twisted. And so I feel like it takes me longer to knit the socks than it does on DPNs. However, this pattern is for 2 at a time socks to make them perfectly so they match perfectly. And since I have the gradients, I decided that was the way to go. And so, like I said, I have my toes started. I do not expect these to get a lot of time in the next several weeks. I expect that these are going to be pushed off for a bit because I have the 2 sweaters that I would really like to do this month, and I also have my chicken, and then I have whatever other chickens come in because I knit for them kind of on a weekly basis. So I have lots and lots of projects that I would like to work on and in progress, and I still also have my mittens as well. So this is really a project for taking with me for when everything else is in a complicated phase, and or I need to wind yarn, I need to count, I need to increase, I need to whatever, or it's a big bulky sweater and I don't want to take the whole bag with me. So you likely will not see these super often. I'll bring them back when I make progress on them, but this is kind of I just needed a roundy project that was not difficult at all, and so my plan is just to work on these when time permits. So that is what's on my needles this week. I'm not going to show you the cuff on the mitten because it's like a 3-inch cuff. Hopefully I will get to work on those this week, but probably my biggest priority my biggest priorities right now will be my mom's sweater, the cardigan that I would like to, I frogged it, I would like to finish it this month, and then my chicken feathers. So that is kind of what I have there. I'm going to take a quick sip of tea. I will talk 2 seconds about spinning, and then we will move on. So I was hoping that I could jog my memory, but I didn't. So let's talk about the fiber that I'm spinning. Okay. I brought some fiber to you and showed it to you. It is Hello Yarn, and it's in blues and greens, and it's got some pinks and purples. It was very pastel except for this kind of navy here, and it is called Peck on the Cheek, and it is Rambouillet, which means it is a fluffy merino that will definitely puff up when I wash it. It's going to be super soft and really pretty. Lots of blue, like I said, lots of blues and greens, but also a little bit of pink and lavender, and then some of this navy. This is the first 2 ounces spun up on a bobbin, and I am working on the second 2 ounces. I think I only have 1 ounce left, and so my hope is that I will finish this and apply this week, and this will be going up in the shop. So if these are your colors, it will be there soon, and I will definitely show it next week at the podcast. That means it was also time to figure out something else to spin, and I bought some new fiber, and that's about the only thing I'm sort of allowing myself to buy because I actually go through fiber fairly quickly these days, and if I put it in the shop and it sells, then I can sort of justify buying new fiber. Plus I also have funds to buy new fiber. And a week or 2 ago, I noticed that she goes by Melanated Boho Bay. I think that's how you pronounce it. Her name is Amanda, and she often produces really lovely hand-spun yarns, and she dyes quite a bit, but she also dyes braids of fiber. And so she updated with braids of fiber, and this one caught my eye. It didn't have a name. It was called, I think it was just her January colorway of the month. It is on BFL and silk, and it is just absolutely stunning. It's greens and peaches, and then a little bit of this fuchsia here, and I am really digging this. It's very springy to me. So kind of the lush greens as they come back in the spring, and peaches and purple flowers or magenta flowers, and a little bit of gold, and I'm really liking this braid. So this is going to be the next on my wheel, and this will also be for the shop. Like I said, it's BFL silk, so it's going to have a nice luster and shine, and I'm really looking forward to spinning this. So I will put a link to Melanated Boho Bay's shop. She is she's not new to me in the sense that I've been following her on Instagram for a while, but this is the first time that I am spinning fiber from her, and I'm really excited to do so. So that is kind of what's upcoming this week. I did not do quilting this weekend. I don't know. I just got intimidated and decided to knit instead. I did take time to, so part of my reticence to sew this weekend is that my quilt top is now ready for my little Halloween quilt, and I am ready to basically begin quilting it. but I need to sort of teach myself how to quilt. And there are a couple ways that you can quilt a quilt. One of the ways that you can do it, and when I say quilt a quilt, I'm referring to taking the top that I created and layering it with backing and batting fabric, and then sewing through all of those layers, which I know it's terrible because all of the words are quilt, but that is the process known as quilting your quilt, which I know it's like, yeah. So I need to put together that sandwich, and then I need to figure out how I want to sort of sew through that to attach all 3 layers to each other. And there are lots of ways you can do that. One of the easiest ways when you're starting is called straight line quilting, and that is you can basically sew straight lines through your quilt. So you can echo the lines on your blocks, you can do like diagonals, so you can go point to point from corner to corner, and there are all sorts of tools that can help you. You need a special foot for your machine, and then you can either, you can use rulers, you can, they make extra heavy quilting rulers, so you could actually use a quilting ruler and you bump it up against the side of the foot, and then you hold the ruler in place and you let the quilt go along the edge of the, you let the quilting foot go along the edge of the ruler, so that keeps your line straight. The other way to do it is you can trace lines on there. Using a ruler, obviously, you can trace them on there using a fabric marker or a pencil or something light, and you can then sew on those lines and, you know, just trust yourself to keep straight and follow those lines. That's not a huge skill that I have. You can, and then the other thing you can do is called free motion quilting. And a lot of you are probably familiar with that because a lot of you have probably seen quilts where there are all kinds of patterns. There are swirls, or there are feathers, or there are leaves, or any of those fun designs that you see on quilts. That is free motion quilting. And sometimes that can be done with a quilting machine. And you can either do it freehand, or there are long arm quilting machines where you can program in patterns and it will just repeat the pattern on the quilt. Or you can do what's called free motion quilting on your own home machine, which is you are just moving the quilt around under the foot in whatever pattern you would like. And what I would like to do is something called a meander pattern, which is just basically, it's like curves and curly cues, and you're just kind of going back and forth, almost like a meandering path. And basically you can kind of start at one point and just keep going until you run out of thread or until you run out of quilt. But I need to teach myself to do this, and I need to teach myself not on my actual quilt. I need to do some practice. So the first thing that I did was I knew I was going to be doing this, so I ordered some extra feet for my quilt, for my sewing machine, so that I could put them on. And honestly, the first stumbling block is I wasn't exactly sure which kind of feet to order, and so I looked them up, and I ordered what it sort of said would fit my machine, and then I didn't understand how they fit together. So that was kind of my first stumbling block. I was like, I don't even know how to install these feet. I don't even know if they're the right feet. I don't know how to use them. And so the thing that I did this weekend is I watched a bunch of videos and I figured out how to install the free motion quilting foot on my machine. And spoiler alert, it took me about 10 minutes when I did it. But you know how these things, well, maybe you don't know, but sometimes things just seem daunting in your mind and you can't get over that stumbling block. And then once you get over that stumbling block, you're like, that was really easy. Really, I had to Google a few different times. I had to look at my manual, and I had to watch a video of someone installing a free motion quilting foot on their machine. And I was like, oh, that's how it goes. So it is now on my machine, and I decided not to practice this past weekend. So next weekend, I'm going to take some scrap fabric, some scrap batting, more scrap fabric. I'm going to sandwich those 3 layers together, and then I'm going to put it on my machine and try and do some free motion quilting. And I will report back on how it goes. And then theoretically, if that goes well, then I will be working on my actual quilt after that. So that is sort of where I am in my quilting journey, and I will work on it this weekend, and I will bring some stuff to show you next week so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. So I think that's all I have for you this week. I hope that you are having a good week and that you are feeling crafty. I'd love to hear about what you're working on, if you're working on anything special. And I think that's about it for me. So I will say, as I always do, happy spinning, happy knitting, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.